I think you'll be interested in. It's in English. I want to get it in Czech. That's my big mission, and I want to get it in German too, because the book, or my father's story, is going to be featured in Germany starting in September in a traveling exhibit that's going around that the ITS, the International Tracing Service, and the Anne Frank educational facility in Frankfurt are involved in putting together. And so it's about people that were displaced during the war, which my group of people, there's a lot of them with those stories, so they're featuring him. So it's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I need to get it
from Czechoslovakia?
Yes. My father, I don't know what you knew. Maybe you don't know much.
We don't
No, we don't know. We are just curious to know.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. You don't even know why you're here. Yeah. Well, I'm
Just
glad
a
you're
couple
here.
sentences.
I'm glad you're here. Okay, the introduction is my father was born in Bohemia when it was Austria-Hungary in 1911 in Benešov. if you know where that is. Benešov. And his family went back, 300 years that I can document at that time. And he became a doctor at Charles University. And his parents and he moved to Prague in 1932 for him to go to school there. And my grandfather was working in Prague. And he became a doctor, and in 1937, as a lot of people went into the military, he went into the Czechoslovak army. And he was there during many monumental things, like Austria being taken over, and the Munich Agreement and Kristallnacht. So he was there in a big period of time, and he was actually working as a doctor in the army. And when the Nazis came in March of 1939, he managed to escape, and he made his way back to Prague. I might add that I have 7 hours of interviews that I did with my father. He passed away in January of 2000, actually. My mom and dad died within 2 days of each other. So I always kind of thought I would write his great stories up in a book. But at the time my parents died, we found a treasure trove of letters and other documents, and that's what I'm going to show you. There's 400 letters written by 78 different writers. Most of them are Czech. They were either family or friends, and they really are amazing. So they really, what they are, what happened with my father is he made his way back, decided to stay behind. My father was of Jewish heritage. Not a lot of places would take you. He managed to get a visa, buying it in the black market actually, to China. And there's a lot of stories that go with this. So he made his way to China, and I have a map I'll show you of his trip to China. When he arrived there, he didn't stay in Shanghai like a lot of refugees did. There were 20,000 European refugees that made their way to Shanghai, and he didn't stay there. He tried to set up his own medical practice, and there were a lot of doctors, so he couldn't get any patients, basically. And so he went to the interior of China in a place called Pingtingxing, which is way in the interior of China. But he went to Peking, Beijing, to learn Chinese, and he was there for 3 months, and then he went back to that hospital and worked there. And one time when he went to Peking to buy supplies for the hospital, there was a great altercation. The Japanese were there fighting the Chinese nationalists and the Chinese communists who had gotten together at that time to fight the Japanese. But while he was in Peking at that moment, the communist Chinese blew up the railroad bridges on the train track that he had been. So fate intervened, because he was in Peking when my mother, who was born of American missionaries in China and had lived there till she was 10, and then come back to America and became a teacher. And that, the month after my father got there, actually 3 weeks after he was stranded there, my mother arrived to teach. And after she was there for 2 days, she met him. And after 8 days, he asked her to marry him. And they were married about 60 years and had a true love affair. They were perfectly suited for each other. So a lot of adventure happens in China. All the while my father is writing these letters to his friends and family. Many who perished, 44 relatives ended up perishing in the Holocaust, including my grandparents. But my father wrote letters a lot to his friends who were like him. They were young lawyers and professionals and doctors who had gone to Charles University and who had their life in front of them. They were hanging out at a place called Monash Cafe. Do you know where that is?
Monash Cafe.
Monash Cafe.
Yeah.
I have references to that in the letter. We've been there. Roger and I've been back to Prague now 3 times. So I've seen it now, and I know it's being brought back to its splendor. So my first book I ended up writing is about 7 of the letter writers who were friends or cousins of my father. And I didn't know who most of them were when I started. After we discovered the letters, it was a big puzzle, and I kind of chose all the letters and some other things as my inheritance because I really wanted to know what they said. So I owned an engineering company, and I sold that just to do this in 2008, and that's all I've been doing. So I was writing my father's epic tale, and I was in the midst of that, and I kept meeting, so to speak, all these other people through the letters. So I decided I would go in search of some of them. So I went in search of these 7, and I found 2 alive, and I went to see them, and I delivered their letters. One lived in Washington, one in Chicago.
Oh, they're here in the
They
U.S.?
were 91 years old when I went to see them. One has passed away since then, a woman. She was actually the wife of one of the major characters. And one of them is a man who's still alive. He's 94 now. So I've met all their descendants all over the world, you know, from New Zealand to Great Britain to Canada. Kids like me, I'm turning 65 soon, so they're children like me, and they had no idea, of course, the letters existed. Most of us had no idea that the people existed, you know, the friendships kind of fell apart. All these people survived, but all of them lost their parents and in it, as well as other friends and stuff, and most of them didn't return to the Czech lands afterwards. They made their lives somewhere else, so that part's sad. But my father started going back in 1963, and he went back 10 times. He had one surviving aunt who actually wrote some of the more interesting letters after the war, because she tells my father all the things she's learned and what she thinks happened to people, and they're amazing letters. And so she has since passed away, but her 2 sons were first cousins of my father. They were quite a bit, maybe 10 years younger than my dad, but they were friends all their lives. And so my father would always go to see them. And then, of course, they had kids. So long story short, now Roger and I go to see them. And they have family reunions to honor our arrival. And they help me with all my, you know, investigation to find out about the people and everything. So it's this very magical experience with a lot of sad pieces, but it's also a great study of history. So now I get Bohemia, is how my Czech reviewers tell me. You know, just knowing the people and what their history, what your history, what all of y'all's history was that made you kind of who you were and how you react, and certainly, you know, having to be under many tyrants over many, many years and how you would address that, you know, kind of creates the decisions that you make. That and many other things. So all of the people that I've met, I've really felt like, you know, they've really helped me understand who I am, and my brother and sister are, because of that historical background. So it's been a wonderful gift.
And what you understand, who are you? What are you understand?
What do I understand about me, who I am?
Yeah.
Well, I'm diligent, I'm determined, you know, I'm kind of fearless. I think that's all Czech traits, you know. I really do value education. I love research, you know, and my father loved music and art, and he was left brain, right brain person, you know. He was a great artist. And he did a lot that they even displayed at Monash. And then also he made character drawings of his professors at Charles University. And when we went with my father there in 1995, they were displayed in Charles University, his drawings. So we've been back, and they were renovating it the last time we were there, so they didn't even know where they are, so I hope they exist. But I have copies of a lot of that stuff. So that, you know, there's, Roger probably, what have I left out in
But she won't tell you the important parts. She was probably one of the most honored leaders of the community. She chaired the World Cup that was successfully brought here and was the best venue in the World Cup in 1994. She chaired the entire effort, and at that time, and maybe still, the only woman who's ever chaired one of those venues. So she uses her business acumen. She founded her own engineering company and built it to 50 people. You know, at the time she sold it. She's been the chairperson or co-chair of most of our community funding initiative for schools and highways and transportation and those kind of things. So, you know, what you see and what you will detect is a nice, wonderful, soft exterior, but right below it lies a bulldog, a pit bull. When she grabs onto something, it just is, it's going down, it's gonna happen, that's just it. So, and she continues to this time to, you know, write letters for, you know, correct things that are wrong with this community and ought to be straightened out. My word columns, we call them. So she's quite remarkable.
That's my loving husband.
And I'm
Thank
not
you,
at
Raj.
all biased.
Yeah, thank you very
The
much.
World Cup was a big thing to have here.
It was a big thing, yeah. Yeah, that was 6 years of being a volunteer, from the time that we were submitting the bid to the time we hosted it.
Do you know if any of your families, the World War II, any connection? Do you know if any grandparents, great-grandparents?
Not me.
No.
No.